Now, we will continue our journey with Smart Cities panel that will be presented by many interested people working in this area. They do deployments in several smart cities over the world. They are partnering with city management. And here they will share their experience and advices to the LoRaWAN ecosystem in order to expand and address all cities' challenges. It's my pleasure to welcome on stage Joseph Scott Kubes from OrbiWise, Boris Stöckermann from Minol Group, Violet Zhu from Z Studio, and Eric Borbeau from X-TELIA, and Anas Ouali from 3S.
Yeah, hello everybody. So welcome to the Smart City panel. So I'm very happy that we have today this panel up and running here. Let me start this. And we have Anas from Tunisia, so we're quite international today. We have Violet from China, so she just told me they have been a long, long travel way coming here. We have Eric from France, and we have Scott from the US. So I'm Boris Stöckermann, I'm coming from Minol Zenner, I'm coming from Europe. So I'm the acting LoRa Aligned Smart City Workgroup Chair. I'm very happy to present you this session today. And we directly jump into it. Maybe somebody could start the timer, would be great, thank you. So we are with LoRaWAN since almost 7 years with Minol and Zenner. It's a family-owned business. We're actually operating a big network. It's, I guess, not the largest one, but it is. And why I bring this always up is to give you an impression about how strong and scalable LoRaWAN is. We're running a network actually with 68,000 gateways with 4.8 million end devices. And the end devices is primarily what you see here on. We are doing heat cost and water cost allocation, so it's heat meters and water meters and smoke detectors. This is what we are primarily doing in the Minol, which is a German company and the owning business of the whole group. The same we are doing in the rest of Europe, primarily in the Nordics. We acquired a company called Brunata, and they're doing the same business and having 80% market share. What we are doing here, we are changing the actual readout infrastructure over the last 3 years, and we still have some years to go, because when we started it, we had already an implemented base of 30 million end devices. So physically exchanging the traditional reading to LoRaWAN. Why are we doing? Because we are required to give our customers insight in their consumption during the year and not only once per year. Zenner, as the main producer of all our meters, we're by developing and transforming our own business into LoRaWAN. We found out that it could be helpful because Zenner is producing water meters and the whole infrastructure what we are working with, and they're running this in 140 countries. We are selling to water companies traditional water meters. And by engaging ourselves by developing the products with LoRaWAN, we came along that this might be a good entry point for smart cities. And this we started primarily in Germany. So actually we enabled more than 280 concepts with cities. We're engaging 1,500 utility, and this is Germany only. And this is a pretty good scope what we are doing here. From the use case perspective, and I will get deep into that, but this is not the whole portfolio what you can do with LoRaWAN in smart cities. This is only a few use cases. Many of these, what you see here, we did already with Zenner. And some of it, my colleagues here will deep dive into later in what they're doing with their companies. So for cities, it's quite, what is a city? A city finally is a collection of buildings at the end, and of course the inhabitants and the citizens in here. So we are talking a lot about smart building and building. So we have a lot of public buildings, schools, public buildings, and what comes to our mind there is air quality. Air quality monitoring, it was not only CO2, it's temperature, it's humidity, which is quite everywhere to see in different verticals, and of course within cities and public buildings. Energy efficiency and monitoring, actually it's a very strong thing due to the energy crisis we had. All the German cities actually are forced to bring down the official room temperature in public buildings by 3 degrees down. So how are they monitoring this, and how do they maintain this? So LoRaWAN is a great opportunity to do this. Field level monitoring, and we call all different level of waste monitoring, oil containers, all things what you can think of, what it's something getting empty or something getting full. You all know this, and there are hundreds of use cases of this in cities. If this is sand boxes or salt boxes for the roads or for winter services, we will have a little bit from Eric on this later on. Smart street lighting, Anas will give us a deep dive into that, what they're doing there. Why street lighting? Yeah, it's a thing of energy consumption, reduction of energy, but also security in cities is a major thing. And we transformed several cities in Germany. They had an old traditional system, software, where the software license fee per year, it's much over the overall cost you have to spend in for a whole LoRaWAN own network system, including all the sensors. Smart waste, this is an obvious thing that many cities are already starting with smart waste monitoring. It's not only knowing which box get filled up, but you have a system behind it optimizing your routings of the cars. A very special one is the local monitoring of local subsystem of power stations. This was one of the first cases we did with Zenner with some cities, because they have to pay fines when they having a special period of downtimes with their system, and we learned a lot about that they have up to 25 trafo systems, which they really don't know which one of the trafos has gone down, and they're saving a lot of time by using LoRaWAN for this, identifying the power system. Smart parking, we heard a lot this morning already, and the same comes with smart electromobility. It's nice that you have an application showing you which electromobility loading system is available for you, but even worse when you come there and the parking lot is taken by a non-charging car. And monitoring traffic. This is, of course, a thing everybody is looking for, optimizing the city infrastructure, getting the traffic low, and traffic control, if it's parking traffic or general traffic. As we are a water company with Zenner, producing thousands of water meters, water level is a thing, and not only during the catastrophe in the Ahrtal we had last year. Almost every city and municipal in Germany actually comes up to us and asking for how we can do water level monitoring to avoid and get an early pre-warning when something happened here. Smart water, but it's not only fill level or water level, it's also quality of water. You may are aware of the heating periods. We had several occasions where fish dying was a real issue because the oxygen in the water went off and you got an algae catastrophe there. So monitoring remotely by LoRaWAN, water quality is a major thing. And finally, and this is not only in Denmark, actually a legal requirement when you build up new buildings, you are forced to have leakage monitoring in your building, which is of course something we have to go for. And due to the time, smart metering, manhole monitoring, and metering in buildings, of course, is the core business I showed you already. This is what the whole industry in the city environment actually demanding from us, especially. I want to hand over and introduce Scott. You introduce yourself because you have been on the show already.
Okay.
And
I guess green means go.
Yeah. You have something, and it's awesome to have you here. Thank you, Scott.
So hello, folks. Probably some of you were in the keynote, so you probably saw me this morning talking a bit. But back now, talking about specific use cases around monitoring noises in city environment. Got a couple of interesting stories to tell. My name is Scott Kubes again. I'm head of business development for OrbiWise. For the Americas and also Australia and New Zealand. We're based out of Geneva, Switzerland. A lot of you may know us for supplying LoRaWAN network server, certainly an industry-leading LNS. And we've recently, or not recently really, this is something that's been going on for a while. We've been working with the city of Geneva, where we're headquartered, in developing a noise monitoring solution. And for those of you that may know or may not know, noise is a real problem. It's a pollution just like a piece of trash or something in the water, plastics and so forth. And it can have dire effects on people's health. You know, you can be exposed to 80 dB noise for 40 hours during a week and you're not going to end up with any hearing damage. You're exposed to a noise goes up to 90 dBA, that's down to 4 hours. If you get blasted at 120 dB right now, you're going to end up with permanent hearing damage in some form. So something to keep in mind. This is a very real problem, particularly in cities. Unfortunately, up till now, really the way that cities have had to deal with this is using very expensive monitoring solutions and acoustic consultants. And that can be very expensive, time-consuming, and frankly, it only gives you a snapshot picture of the noise or the sound in your city or wherever for that brief period. So a month later, you might be running into something different. So at the end of the day, the idea, and certainly this is something LoRaWAN does, is to offer a permanent solution that is affordable and just can be left in place. So introduce, you know, OrbiWise, our SAMPOLS noise solution. So it's a combination of the sensor that you see pictured there. I've got some sitting on our table in the marketplace, so stop by and take a look at it. And then, of course, that ties into a nice application on the back end. And this is going to give you the profile of noise. So the sensor itself is measuring noise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. So it's a continuous measurement, and you're saving all of this data. So it's not a brief snapshot. The life of the sensor on the battery, even measuring continuously, is up to 1.5 years. Generally, this is reporting every 15 minutes, and of course, it's using LoRaWAN radio technology for the connectivity link. So a couple of very interesting stories in trying to move this along. We started off, this was developed for the city of Geneva for just a general noise violations, and the EU has very strict regulations about that. But this quickly really morphed into, now they use it to monitor traffic noise across the city, especially the core of the city, and they use that to influence traffic patterns during rush hour. So they can actually change the traffic lights and reroute traffic to try to bring the noise levels down to more acceptable things. So if you go into Geneva, you will see these sensors up every block in the core of the city, and they're continuously measuring noise and reporting into the city of Geneva. And you see the little color-coded map, that's the very core of the city. So, but really fascinating use case, and we started that back in 2017 as a joint project. Chevron, the big oil and gas company, we supply our LNS to them globally, but in talking with their El Segundo refinery in Los Angeles, those of you that fly into LAX would see this, they had an issue with noise when we were just talking about LoRaWAN in general, and we offered our solution, and at first they were kind of like, well, I don't know, we just had an expensive acoustic consultant come in, they generated this nice report, but then we started selling them on this permanent solution. And so now we've got close to 300 sensors deployed there within the refinery and in the surrounding community. The use case driving this was that they have very expensive neighborhoods, and you can see one of them just to the south and a small strip along. Yes, that is the Pacific Ocean and the beach. So this is very expensive real estate, and people don't like noise at 3 a.m. in their houses. So to be a good neighbor, they put this solution in, and now they're monitoring noise constantly, and now they can deal with community relations more effectively. So it's really cool. And now they're also even discovering more interesting noises, things they didn't even know were going on. So the use of this goes even beyond just the smart city noise problem. So very interesting use case as well. What else is everybody looking for? Of course, longer battery life is always great. So we're looking at next generation solutions for this. Hazardous environment certifications, as you can imagine, with somebody like an oil company. noise direction detection. Where is the noise actually coming from? And we do a little bit of that right now. The noise source type, so this gets into actual frequency profile measurements. So this is the proverbial gunshot detection type of scenario, which is much more complicated and involved. Of course, better noise mapping, alerts, alarms, analysis, and then maybe even additional sensors to enhance just the noise, weather type of temperature, humidity, gas detection, so other things that can be paired with that. So anyway, that's
awesome. Thank you very much, Scott, for this deep insight to the noise projects. So welcome, Violet from Seed. So just jump into it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Violet from Seed, a sales consultant at Seed. So what is Seed? We are a tech company that provides advanced perception system, from sensors to network devices, edge computing devices, industrial controller, as well as cloud and software services. So among the sensors and networking sector, we have a strong focus on LoRaWAN. Like Boris and Scott mentioned earlier, there are a lot of different application scenarios in the smart city. And for us, I would like to specifically emphasize the weather data. So what we offer is different kind of weather sensors, weather stations. Like the one on the left is the consumer level of very affordable weather station that has LoRaWAN built in, and you can configure it very easily to collect the data on LoRaWAN network. And the other parts of them, you can look at it, is very robust and industrial grade weather sensors, and it can be connected with a LoRaWAN DTU, so they can collect the data on LoRaWAN. So the application scenarios in the smart city includes like smart lighting control, including for like providing weather data so that they can better manage the route for logistic transportation or food delivery, or for governments to better manage the city. And we provide this open platform so that our sensors can use with any standard LoRaWAN gateway, or even with our LoRaWAN gateway and our sensor, you can use on any different kind of LoRaWAN network server. So I would like to quickly share a few user cases of our products on the smart city scenario. The first one is deployed in Shreveport in Louisiana here in the USA. So our partner is Spread Networks. They provide they deploy this kind of weather station in different scenarios on the golf course and also water treatment plant. So they collect these different kind of weather data. You can see from the image here, it's our 8-in-1 weather station. So they collect this different kind of weather data. What they will provide is, with the weather data, they can show to the local government and tell them, hey, we have this weather data here that is very easily to collect, and then they can provide some kind of suggestions about what kind of actions can be taken based on the weather data provided here, like from the government or even for business. So this is a project at an early stage, but you can see the data there, collect the data very accurately and stably on the Helium network. And the second project is also in the US, is in California, and our partner is they are the company more in the new trending world of Web3. So it's called Natural Crypto Capital. So they collect our weather data in downtown in Santa Ana, and also in the regional park in Irvine. So they collect this different kind of weather data so that they can track how these kind of environmental data can affect the carbon sequestration in the different areas of the city, so that they can, in the next step, they can, on the one hand, is to collect the data very transparently on the blockchain, so that this kind of carbon data is not reused, because it's already been used and transparent on the blockchain. But on the other hand, they want to see if they can collect the data accurately on the blockchain, so that they can maybe help to onboard the regional park or certain green area onto the carbon market. So that is a very sustainable way to encourage people to do some actions that is more sustainable, more responsible for our planet Earth. So this is the weather data collected on the Helium network on the blockchain, and it's also at a very early stage, but they actually already got the second batch of the sensors, and then they would deploy it in other areas, so that we are looking forward to see it on the mainnet and how it can leverage the technology of LoRaWAN, blockchain, and for the social good. And the next one is a project in South Africa. So it's provided by our partner called UCA. They have a specific focus on environmental sensing, and then they provide this solution with a real estate company called Borbeau. So they deploy the weather data on, this is a demo they are testing this month, like this week specifically, they're deploying in the field. So they deployed it in the construction site so that they can get the data about, oh, now the wind is too strong or the rain is very heavy, so that they should not go on with the construction for the workers' safety issues. And then after that, for long-term use is like this weather data, because like weather station, because it's industry grade, it can be very robust. So after the construction is finished, they can continue putting it in the like residential community, so they can provide the weather data to continue to support the community there with the weather information. And the last use case is project deployed in Cagliari in Italy. So they deployed more than 500 different sensors and weather stations in the city, specifically to collect the data, and then they can study the heat island effect in the city. Either maybe this part of the, like based on the data, they're saying this part of the building needs to be in light color so that it's better for the heat island effect, or maybe in this part of the city there's not enough green land, so they need to take some actions. And this is specifically for the governments to manage the city. But on the other hand, there's the academics' role in it as well, because they can collect the data and then they can do research and see what can be done in the future for to set examples for other cities as well. So they are using our weather data and use it on the AWS IoT network. So this is pretty much about a few cases I would like to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I think the weather is a really critical thing, especially for cities. I mentioned the flooding one, but I think the overall air condition, temperature, humidity is a massive thing. And wind, exhaust, this is really strange. Thank you, Ouali. Eric, you're on accent.
Okay, my name is Eric Borbeau. I'm one of the founders of X-TELIA. We're a Canadian, not French, but we're French-Canadian, so you're close. We're a Canadian LoRaWAN public network operator. We're also a systems integrator, so we do a lot of applications. We'll deploy LoRaWAN network in a city, and then we'll work with the city to provide them a variety of applications that will allow them to make the city smarter. So I'm just going to show a couple of examples here of things we've done that we find are pretty cool. One of them is we're doing vehicle tracking in cities in Canada for things like tracking snow removal equipment, so that they're able to see which streets have been plowed and which streets they forgot. So before people call in and say, nobody came and cleaned my street, I have a foot of snow, I can't get out of my house. So typically when we talk about LoRaWAN and tracking or asset tracking or vehicle tracking, we're talking about battery-powered sensors, because that's what LoRaWAN is known for, low power. But if you're doing tight tracking, it's got to be something that's powered, because we're talking one GPS message every 5 seconds. This way we're able to get a really tight track, and we know exactly where the vehicles have gone. So the challenges here is that if you're doing something in a city and you've deployed the network across the city, that's great. But what if the vehicle has to leave the city to go somewhere else? Well, there might not be LoRa coverage everywhere. So that's one of the challenges we have. So what we ended up doing is essentially building a solution that works with LoRaWAN trackers or cellular trackers seamlessly. So what we did is we found, we used an AVL platform, so a standard platform that's made to track vehicles, typically in cellular GPS. And then we built a service that will take the data coming off the LoRa network server, convert it so that it looks like it's coming from a cellular GPS. So the platform doesn't know the difference. It thinks it's just connected to a bunch of traditional cellular GPS trackers, but in fact, some of them are LoRaWAN, some of them are cellular, and it's all seamless. So fire trucks are typically cellular because they go to places, maybe other cities, but the rest of the municipal vehicles are LoRaWAN, cheaper, just as effective as cellular, so a lot more cost effective. That's an example. And here are some cities that have implemented that. We're doing a big project with the Port Authority of Montreal around traffic for big trucks coming into the port, stuff like that. So I'll talk about another one, hardware agnostic advanced water meter reading. For those of you that were in the session a few minutes ago on water meters, or if you, the one just before this on Usify, you may be a little bit familiar with this area. Currently, Europe has a legacy standard for reading water meters, which is Pulse. North America is mostly using something called encoded meters. And more cities are fed up with managing multiple types of antennas and multiple proprietary hardware for different smart city use cases. So that's why, of course, LoRaWAN is interesting. You set up your network once, and then you can deploy a whole bunch of different use cases. Now, for water meters, there are companies, water meter companies, that have started developing LoRaWAN radios or LoRaWAN transmitters for their water meters or other water meters. So they're using an open standard transport mechanism, so there's no longer proprietary set of antennas. They're going through LoRaWAN. But the thing is, they don't give anybody the protocol or how to decode their format of their message. So essentially, it becomes a proprietary solution because you're basically locked in. If you go with the vendor's solution, you're going to be subscribing to their cloud for the next 25 years because that's the only way to get your data. Even if you're using LoRaWAN, which is a standard, it's kind of frustrating because you use an open standard, but you keep a little piece of the puzzle so the customer cannot do anything except go through you. So it kind of defeats the purpose. So what we did is we built a true hardware agnostic, open standards water meter reading application or interface, AMI interface. So it's hardware agnostic from a water meter perspective. You can use water meters from pretty much any standard manufacturer. And you can also use the transmitter you want. So, some of our customers will use, I don't know, a tactilic module that is connected to their water meters and it comes into our platform, we read it. Others will use something from Europe like AGNOSTIC, for example, to read Pulse, etc. I mean, we're not stuck on one hardware product. Essentially, as long as it's LoRaWAN and as long as we have the decoder, we put the decoder in the platform, and then it's truly open. If our customers decide, whether utilities or cities, if they decide in 5 years they want to do something else than use our system, they can access the raw data right off the network server. And this is compatible with OrbiWise network server and X-TELIA and all the other ones on the market. So again, we're truly open. And I think that's what really is innovative about this approach. It's available in different languages. We have a utility in the US that's starting to deploy water meters based on this solution. We remote manage their gateways because we're also an operator, so they don't have to deal with that. They just connect up their water meters, they have access to the data, they have access to the platform, and they're truly in an open, non-locked-in environment, which I think is what LoRaWAN should be all about.
Thank you very much. So you just referred also to Rick Sanders, I guess. So I think you can pass directly. I think the openness of LoRaWAN, as you mentioned, it's depending. If you're using an open protocol, then you should be completely open, right? So there are other members in the organization, and you all know them. We are opening up, right? So
that's why Usify.
But there are some others not
right?
opening.
Like something like Usify will bring a standard.
Absolutely.
Maybe solve the problem.
Absolutely correct. Thank you very much, Eric.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Anas Ouali. I'm from 3S Tunisia. I will try to talk about our experience in deploying an end-to-end IoT solution for a specific use case related to smart cities, which is smart street lighting. So first of all, I will talk about our strategy, our global strategy as 3S Group, in order to maximize our involvement in the value chain, in the IoT value chain. And this is our major guideline in order to address emerging markets with challenging constraints, especially with cost, with technology adoption, with regulation, etc. So 3S is a system integrator. It's a network operator. It's also an internet service provider in Tunisia, and we have major investments in microelectronics, in photovoltaic system integration, in street lighting, in many clean technologies, let's say. So we started back in 2017, 2018, in deploying one of the first nationwide IoT networks based on LoRaWAN technology, and it was a great success for us. Second, we started also investing in building our own sensors, because in order to succeed in the whole IoT value chain, you need to be involved in every box, whether it's sensor with its communication, the network, the platform, the application, and even the customer care. Our second strategy was also to invest in a cloud solution with our friends at X-TELIA, and to have all the solution and to manage the costs of the solution, not to have any hidden cost, whether it's software as a service fees or whatever. And then for the application side, we decided to have an open approach with universities, with startups, with R&D departments in universities, for example, so we can have a broad range of applications. And this enabled us to have more than 15 use cases which are running in Tunisia, ranging from smart cities to agriculture, etc. So what are the challenges and the opportunities? We are not only talking about technology, but what are the challenges for the technology to be adopted by all the countries in the world? As you can see, I had an excerpt from, I had a screenshot from LoRa Alliance wireless coverage for public operators. As you can see, there's a huge continent with very, very, very little coverage, public coverage, I mean, which is Africa, and some other parts in South America or in Asia. And all these regions are related to what we call emerging countries. And when you look deeper in those emerging countries, you'll see that the major growth, the major projected growth in the following years, in the next coming years, comes from these countries. And these countries, they have many challenges for adapting technology, whether it's regulations, public awareness, lack of skills, import tariffs and taxes. You have many, 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 many issues. And one of the issues is the cost. So this is why we are building what we call end-to-end solutions, because we need to have lower costs. We need to involve local people, local skills in order to build the solutions. And this led us, for example, to one of the most interesting use cases that are being deployed in Tunisia and in the region in general, which is what we call LUXBOARD solution, which is a very, very interesting solution because, first of all, it shifts the adoption of LED lighting, which is the new standard for lighting in general. And then we put on top of it the intelligence of LoRaWAN. So you have smart street lighting. This enables us to have a mapping of the whole street lights. You also have the possibility to have the dimming. You know, it's a dynamic lighting. You put it at 100% at the beginning of the evening, and then you can lower it a little bit, and then you raise it after at down. And this enables the customers, enables the cities to reduce up to 50% of their consumption. And the fact that these streetlights are smart, so they can predict, they can tell you that there's something wrong. For example, it's disconnected or the driver is not working very well, etc. We also provide dashboards with customizable time-based locations, because you know that sunset and sunrise differ from city to city or from time to time. We also have helped those customers, our customers, to build major figures for ROI reduction, and we see that with the rising cost of energy, that most of our customers are achieving ROI figures of 2 to 3 years, depending on the dimming strategy and depending on the deployments. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Anas. So may I just get into this? You mentioned, though, the countries coming up. You referred directly to Africa. So I'm very interested in it. So how is the financing models the cities are doing? Sorry? The financing models. So how do they fund their IoT rollouts?
You know, every city has its own, that's how to say, sources or figures. But most of the time, when you go to the government, to the federal government, you go to a bank, you go to GIZ in Germany, you go to USAID, you go to AFDB, which is African Development Bank, and you say, I want to save money, I want to save energy, so provide me with funds. Okay. And when the figures are quite clear, so you have your business plan,
then you get
definitely they get the funding, because they know definitely that within 2, 3, or 4 years, with the economy of electricity bill, they will finance the project by itself.
Oh, I see. So Scott, any from your side, from the US or New Zealand and Australian cities, is there any difference? So I know from Europe you have a lot of European funds. There are funds for IoT digitalization in the cities. Yeah. But how is it in Australia, New Zealand, or in the US especially?
Probably have more perspective, at least with the US or North America. I mean, it honestly depends really from city to city and how they're structured. Some have a very organized central management that looks at IoT and has control over that and in a direct route into the budget for the city. Other cities have a very fragmented approach towards the functions within the city that would have demand for an IoT type device. So they might have a water group and a group that deals with the roads and parking and so forth, and in which case they all have independent budgets and financing, and then you're having to coordinate between all of those. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, kind of like even discussed this morning on the keynote, it's a very fractured, as you go from region to region, a very fractured approach in terms of how things are financed. South America gets into a whole nother, that's assuming, and I hate to say this, I don't mean it to sound critical, but do the governments even have the budget, the money to be able to get into projects? They would like to do it, and they have to find it. And usually it's the programs or projects where there's a real dire need that get funded first, and sometimes IoT doesn't fall in that.
Yeah, so I see. So Eric, you showed up the openness from LoRaWAN and how you do this with the water company. So coming to IoT platforms, so from this perspective, why do you think it's so open that, or so important that cities using, or that we are providing open IoT platforms? Why is it so important for city?
Well, I mean, it's always been a problem in cities and companies as well. You have one password for this system, another password for that system, another interface for this or for that. People use a lot of systems. In cities, it's no different. They have workers that have a job to do, and if they need 6 different passwords for 6 different systems, it's not good. It's not efficient. So having a city that decides to select a standard for the network, so they deploy LoRaWAN as an IoT infrastructure, and then maybe choose some IoT platform as the general platform for any application, dashboard, this sort of thing. I think that makes it a lot simpler from a management perspective, UI consistency, and adoption from the various people in the city. you can't, I mean, one size fits all doesn't always work, but as much as possible, having a standard IoT platform makes a whole lot of sense for a city.
Awesome, thank you. So Violet, so you showed you're in quite some different countries and locations, what you're doing. So what you could share with the audience is the biggest challenges the cities are facing when they're deploying their IoT networks or their IoT services. What is your experiences there?
So according to the feedback from our customers, there are actually like some things that we might not consider, because when we talk about the LoRaWAN coverage, we usually look at the map and see, oh, the city already is saturated with the coverage. But when they begin to deploy the devices, actually some, like the environment is quite complex. Maybe there's a church here, maybe there's a base station here, or maybe there's a tall building. So even though it might show it's covered, but when they have a device there, it might not have stable data transfer. So this is one thing that they do need to consider. So there are tools that you can map and then to test out the signal in this specific area for deployment. And this is the first thing. And the second is like in the city, even though we say it's easier for you to go to this place or other places in the city other than like in the remote rural area. But when you do have like a weather station up like a few meters above the certain area or even a lighting pole, it's not easy that you can send someone there and test it and say, hey, now is something wrong, you need to calibrate it. So you really need to make sure the product is very robust, and then it can be staying there for a few years, and then you don't need someone to constantly go there to check, because they will involve extra manpower, extra cost, etc. So like for all those challenges, it might not come into our mind when we design the products. There's also why we do need to put the device in the field for testing in the real world scenario, so that we know, oh, this is something we need to take into consideration about the robustness, stability, or like maybe some scenarios with like lightning protection, etc. So these are some of the feedback that we get from our customers. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Violet. So Anna, so unfortunately we're almost done with the time, but I take a little bit time more for us here. And Anna, so what are the key topics and takeaways regarding your IoT projects you made with your cities?
It's technology adoption.
Okay.
It's how to push the technology towards these emerging markets, how to make all the people benefit from the technology at a reasonable cost. This is for us at a high quality, because definitely, even though we are designing our own devices, but definitely we are moving towards certification. So it will add an extra cost, but definitely it will be a better guarantee for our customers.
Okay, thank you. So Scott, I think it came up this morning already a little bit about this interaction ecosystem, how all the players need to work together. And so what advice would you give cities when they are launching or want to go into IoT projects from your experience? What is the best advice?
Certainly in working with LoRaWAN, I think the first stop I would make is right here.
Sure.
Honestly. I always tell people, get in touch with the LoRa Alliance. Hopefully you can become a member, take advantage of that. But at a minimum, the resources that are even available generally through the LoRa Alliance, you're going to see the ecosystem and who the different players are, who to reach out to. You're going to find other cities in your region or even globally that you can reach out to and seek advice from. So don't be afraid. I think a lot of times people are reluctant to reach out to people that they don't know or have any commitment towards or anything. But I think the Alliance is a wonderful organization. It's very open and welcoming, and we do that out of, I'll say, selfish purposes. We want to build the Alliance up. We all want to sell more product and make the LoRaWAN a better technology and standard so that we'll all do better. So the old expression, rising tides raise all ships. So, yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. So Eric, you want to add something to that from your perspective? What advice would you give? Because
I would say for a city that's trying to get into this, I would say get some help. A lot of times IT guys in cities are used to deploying local area networks. They're used to deploying Wi-Fi in parks, and they think that LoRaWAN is just like another Wi-Fi. They're going to set up a gateway somewhere, and it's all going to be really easy. And then they run into a wall. So I think, having a company or a consultant or somebody that can help them plan out their network deployment, do a network coverage analysis ahead of time, figure out where to put the gateways, how many gateways, what kind of coverage they're going to get, understand, what kind of redundancy do they need in their network, what are the use cases they're going to do, do they need to go into basements, or they're only going to be tracking stuff on poles. I mean, it makes a difference in terms of, density of gateways you need to deploy. So it's not as easy as it sounds, and I think getting some help is a really good way to have a successful deployment of LoRaWAN for a city, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlotte, final.
Yeah, so my key takeaway is, like you mentioned about like the importance of the ecosystem and the community here. So I think no matter what role we play in this community, as a like device manufacturer and designer, or as system integrator, or individual who want to develop products, actually there are so many resources out there. So even us as a device like designer and manufacturer, we provide some of our products as open source so that we can encourage people to build their own devices from this open platform, open standards. So don't think too much about whether it's feasible or not. Just reach out and begin the conversation. So there might be something fruitful coming out from it. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So I share our email addresses with you, and of course the whole panel is still here tomorrow, today. So reach out to us. We're on the marketplace, or fetch us and contact us for any question you have. So as the chair of the Smart City task force here in the Alliance, of course, I need to do a little bit promotion. And one thing what we want to do is not only having this a real live panel, but also we want to have this coming up over the year in 1 or 2 additional web channel meetings. And I would love to, if you are interested to be on stage virtually or on the next one, and you have a good story to tell, if you're a member or not, reach out. Best contact person is Brenner. Brenner, thank you very much for doing all the support for us here. And of course, I would love to get more participation from all the members. Join us with the Smart City Work Group, because we have so many things we want to share and achieve, and we have hundreds of use cases and cities which are worthwhile to tell the audience and the world out there. So we're doing this every second week on Thursday. Join in and help us to get new stories and help for the cities. If you're a city, a solution provider, a manufacturer, whatever it is. And of course, it's all about LoRaWAN. Thank you very much.